So tonight we continue with a supplement for the study we did on Daniel chapter 2. We previously studied Daniel 1, in which Daniel was taken captive from Jerusalem in Judah to Babylon. And the king of Babylon sought persons who could be trained for imperial service. Daniel and his friends honored the one true God and refused to defile themselves by eating the unclean and unhealthy food of the king, and asked to be fed vegetable diet and water. They were found to be stronger and fitter than others eating the king's food, and after their course of study, God had so blessed them that they exceeded the competence of all the wise men in Babylon. And Daniel was given special ability to understand dreams and visions. In Daniel chapter 2, we saw that when the king had a dream, and he called the wise men and astrologers and magicians and Chaldeans to help him remember the dream, which he forgot, and they could not, and therefore they could not interpret it. So he commanded all wise men to be killed, upon which Daniel, being awoken for execution, prayed to God and delivered the dream and its interpretation to the king. Here or there, we realize that whereas the wise men, astrologers, magicians, and Chaldeans claim to have supernatural connection and understanding, they really had no reliable source of knowledge. In today's presentation, we look more into these issues, and we shall see that attempting to communicate with the spiritual world, but not communicate with God directly, means that we are going to be communicating with devils, and we need to avoid that. Daniel chapter 1. As for these 4 children, God gave them knowledge and skill in all learning and wisdom, and Daniel had understanding in all visions. And I'm showing the Hebrew words for some of these, just to know that we are going into a deeper study. So visions, chazon, and dreams, shalom. Now at the end of the days that the king had said he should bring them in, then the prince of the eunuchs brought them in before Nebuchadnezzar, and the king communed with them. And among them all was found none like Daniel, Hananiah, Mishael, and Azariah. Therefore stood they before the king. And in all matters of wisdom and understanding that the king inquired of them, he found them 10 times better than all the magicians, Chartum, astrologers, Ashaph, that were in his realm. And Daniel continued even to the first year of King Cyrus. So these new graduates of the course were better than all of their teachers. And Daniel, too, introduces some other Hebrew words, sorcerers and Chaldeans. In the second year of the reign of Nebuchadnezzar, Nebuchadnezzar dreamed dreams, wherewith his spirit was troubled and his sleep broke from him. Then the king commanded to call the magicians, the astrologers, and the sorcerers, Kashaf, and the Chaldeans, for to show the king his dreams. So they came and stood before the king. And the king said unto them, I have dreamed a dream, and my spirit was troubled to know the dream. Then spake the Chaldeans to the king in Syriac, O king, live forever, tell thy servants a dream, and we will show the interpretation. The king answered and said to the Chaldeans, the thing is gone from me. If you will not make known unto me the dream with the interpretation thereof, you shall be cut in pieces, and your houses shall be made a dunghill. But if you show the dream and the interpretation thereof, you shall receive of me gifts and rewards and great honor. Therefore show me the dream and the interpretation thereof. So all of these people who had protested that they could communicate with the spirit world, the magicians, the astrologers, the sorcerers, the Chaldeans, they claimed that they had special spiritual knowledge that they could advise the king. And then it turns out that they really had no such connection. So the Seventh Adventist Bible commentary says of magicians, Chartumem, a word occurring only in the Pentateuch and in Daniel. It is borrowed from the Egyptian Cheridem, in which Cheri means chief or outstanding man, and dem to mention a name in magic. So Cheridem is chief of magic or chief magician. According to our present knowledge, the word was not used in Babylon and is nowhere found in cuneiform sources. Obviously, Daniel had become acquainted with the term from his reading of the Pentateuch and need not necessarily have been conversant with Egyptian technical terms. So this word is found in Daniel. Astrologers, Ashapim, a loan word from the Akkadian Ashifu or exorciser. So divination, magic, exorcism, and astrology were widespread among the ancient people. But in some countries like Babylonia, they were practiced by the men of science. Future events were divined by looking in the entrails of sacrificed animals or in the flight of birds. Divination was especially practiced by inspecting the livers of sacrificed animals and comparing them with the inscribed model livers of clay. These models, like a modern manual of palmistry, contain detailed explanations of all form of differences and directions for interpretation. Numerous clay liver models have come to light in the excavation of Mesopotamian sites. The diviner also interpreted dreams, worked out incantation formulas by which evil spirits or sicknesses allegedly could be banished, and asked advice from the supposed spirits of the dead, necromancy. Every Oriental potentate had many diviners and magicians in his service. They were at hand on every occasion and followed their king on military campaigns, hunting expeditions, and state visits, such as the route to be followed or the date for an attack on the enemy. The life of the king was largely regulated and ruled by these men. Astrologers, it's a mistake to assume that the wise men of Babylon were only diviners and magicians. Though skilled in these arts, they were also scholars in the true sense. As in the Middle Ages, alchemy was practiced by men of true scholarly education, and astrology was frequently practiced by otherwise scientifically working astronomers. So the exorcisers and diviners of ancient times engaged also in strictly scientific studies. Their astronomical knowledge had attained to a surprisingly high degree of development, although the peak of Babylonian astronomy came after the Persian conquest. Astronomers were able to predict both lunar and solar eclipses by computation. Their mathematical skill was highly developed. They employed formulas whose discovery is erroneously but generally attributed to the Greek mathematicians. Furthermore, they were good architects, builders, and acceptable physicians who had found by empirical means a cure for many ailments. It must have been in these branches of knowledge and skill that Daniel and his three friends exceeded the Babylonian magicians, astrologers, and scholars. So astronomy is the scientific study of the stars. And astrology is where we get into things like where we're talking about you are Libra and Leo and all of that kind of thing, Virgo, where you are assuming that your birth at a particular time is related to the position of the stars in the sky. And that will govern your personality, your character, and your life. Obviously, that is not true. Sorcerers, Mekashefim, from a root meaning to use enchantments. The Babylonians call them by the cognate word kashafu. The Mekashefim profess to be able to produce magic spells. The Mosaic law pronounced a death penalty upon those who practice this black magic. Chaldeans. This term, Akkadian, Chaldean, designates the members of an Aramean tribe whose early settlement was in Lower Mesopotamia and who had taken over the rulership of Babylonia when Nabopolassar founded the Neo-Babylonian dynasty. The term applies also to a class of scholars at the Babylonian court who were the foremost astronomers of the day. These scholars were equally proficient in other exact sciences such as mathematics, although they included magic and astrology in their activities. Commentators have been divided in their interpretation of the phrase learning and the tongue of the Chaldeans. The older view found among the church fathers sees in the phrase a study of Aramaic languages and literature, while modern commentators are inclined to interpret it as meaning the combined scientific and linguistic knowledge of the Chaldeans. All known scientific writings of that time were inscribed on clay tablets in cuneiform script in the Babylonian language. It must therefore be concluded that the learning and the tongue of the Chaldeans included a thorough training in the classical language and script of the country, that is, in the Babylonian language, and in cuneiform writing, in addition to colloquial Aramaic. Now, the action of the sorcerers and the magicians isn't anything new in Daniel's time. For the Lord spoke to Moses and unto Aaron. This is even before they left Egypt. He's saying, when Pharaoh shall speak with you, saying, show a miracle for you, then thou shalt say unto Aaron, take thy rod and cast it before Pharaoh, and it shall become a serpent. And Moses and Aaron went in unto Pharaoh, and they did so as the Lord had commanded. And Aaron cast down his rod before Pharaoh and before his serpent, and it became a serpent. Then Pharaoh also called the wise men, Chakam, and sorcerers, the same word Kashaf, and the magicians, Chatum of Egypt. They also did in like manner with their enchantment. For they cast down every man his rod, and they became serpents, but Aaron's rod swallowed up their rods. So this was a genuine miracle of God that when Moses cast down his rod, it became a serpent. But Pharaoh and his magicians, Pharaoh's magicians and so on, did the same, not by a genuine miracle, but by the appearance of a miracle performed by the devils. And at this time, God showed his superiority. So the Egyptians had performed black magic. They used to perform these things. And this is centuries before Daniel's time. Wise men, in the SDA commentary, the wise men were educated in science and the art of writing. The sorcerers were charmers who professed to be able to produce magic spells. The word translated magicians is the Egyptian equivalent of the Hebrew word translated sorcerers. Magic was the object of much attention and study in Egypt, as extant texts on magic show. It consisted to a large extent in charms that were thought to have power over men and beasts, especially over reptiles. That these men must have experienced actual results in their practice of magic is obvious from the fact that they were held in such high esteem through the centuries. It therefore must be assumed that they performed at least some of their wonders by the power of evil spirits, though many were no doubt only trickery. Even nowadays, when we see magic tricks performed, some of them are clearly sleight of hand. You know, you move your fingers so fast that people are not seeing what you're actually doing. You know, card tricks and so on. But also, there is obviously in many cases something demonic being done. And we must, of course, avoid those things. So that in Exodus chapter 22, they are told, thou shalt not suffer a witch to live. That is kashaf, a sorcerer or witch. The Seventh-day Adventist Bible commentary says witch is more accurately sorceress. A sorcerer was one who claimed supernatural knowledge or power which he used either to influence the gods or to cast magic spells. The fact that women are designated rather than men suggests that the female sex was more addicted to this crime. I suppose you could even say that even now you have psychics who I believe are more likely to be women than men. In Leviticus chapter 19, verse 26 says, you shall not eat anything with the blood, neither shall you use enchantment, nakash, nor observe times, adan. You shall not make any cuttings in your flesh for the dead, nor print any marks upon you. I am the Lord. Regard not, verse 31, regard not them that have familiar spirits, or neither seek after wizards, Gideoni, to be defiled by them. I am the Lord your God. So they were told to avoid certain things because by engaging or accepting these people who perform those things, they would be encouraging and enabling something that will defile them. And that defilement would obviously be from exposure to evil serpent, evil spirits, devils. Leviticus chapter 20. And the soul that turneth after such as have familiar spirits, and after wizards to go a-whoring after them, I will even set my face against that soul and will cut him off from among his people, said the Lord your God. Verse 27, a man also, a woman that has a familiar spirit, or that is a wizard, shall surely be put to death. They shall stone them with stones, their blood shall be upon them. So there was to be no attempted communication with the dead. Okay, apologies. That word, that praise the Lord of your God at the end of verse 6 was not supposed to be there. So Deuteronomy chapter 17, from verse 2 to 5. If there be found among you within any of the gates which the Lord thy God giveth thee, man or woman, that has wrought wickedness in the sight of the Lord thy God in transgressing his covenant, and has gone out and served other gods or worshipped them, either the sun or moon or the host of heaven, which I have not commanded, and it be told thee, and thou hast heard of it, and inquired diligently, and behold, it is true, and the thing certain that such abomination is wrought in Israel, Then thou shalt bring forth that man or woman which have committed that wicked thing unto thy gates, even that man or woman, and shalt stone them with stones till they die. So that includes the practice of astrology. And I mean, we have actually taken it so far now that we're making it so normalized that people expect their lives to be governed by the stars so much, by the moon and the planets and so on, that we print horoscopes for each day in the newspaper. And this is not now, this is decades now. And people govern their lives by this. So, people will ask somebody when they meet, I suppose it's more the ladies would ask this, what's your sign? Because I am so and so, and therefore I should not be dating somebody who is so and so. Everything is governed by that kind of crazy, and they wouldn't think of it as worship, but they claiming that their life is governed, and the life of everybody is governed by these planets. So therefore, that is the system of planetary worship. When thou art come, Deuteronomy chapter 18, when thou art come into the land which the Lord thy God giveth thee, thou shalt not learn to do after the abominations of those nations. There shall not be found among you anyone that maketh his son or his daughter to pass through the fire, or that uses divination, kasam, kasem. And that is actually, that phrase, the Adventist commentary tells us literally the diviner practicing divination. So it's kasam, kesem. So, and apparently this was used in conjunction with the fire ceremony. This is thought to have been done by drawing lots consisting of headless arrows. Okay, so there shall not be found among you anyone that maketh his son or daughter to pass through the fire, or that useth divination, or an observer of times, or an enchanter, or a witch, or a charmer, or a consulter with familiar spirits, or a wizard, or a necromancer. And the necromancer is a consulter with the dead. For all that do these things are an abomination unto the Lord, and because of these abominations, the Lord thy God doth drive them out before thee. Thou shalt be perfect with the Lord thy God, for these nations which thou shalt possess hearkened unto observers of times and unto diviners. But as for thee, the Lord thy God has not suffered thee so to do. So God has commanded that these things not be done. We are not to be doing those things. Now, a lot of the games have magic, a lot of the computer games have magic in them. So some of them are just about killing, but some of them are about invoking of magic spells and that kind of thing. And all of that is to make it normal for young people to be engaged in spells, to think spells are normal. Right, to think that all of these black magic things and white magic is the same thing are normal and are good, but they are not. So, and how did we get here? Because I suppose very early we would have seen those things in games as well. And we would have seen those things in games because in some of the games, I suppose Mortal Kombat and some of the other games, you would be invoking spells to make so certain motions of the keyboard or the whatever will invoke spells and so on. So you have to know which spells to use against which opponent and all that, right? We would have seen it in TV shows, and it shows on Nickelodeon and Disney. What is the one for children? So Nickelodeon would have been for the teenagers, but even on the ones for children, you would be seeing people with superpowers and magic, using magic to do certain things. And we make it as if it is scientific, but it's not. So we talk about now the X-Men, they are mutants. So they are normal humans with mutated genes which give them certain powers, which of course makes no sense. And of course, that kind of nonsense with the mutation is what enabled them to talk about how the virus mutated so quickly, right? The coronavirus mutated so quickly. And it mutated so quickly that over the space of 3 years, you got like more than, I don't know how many, more than 30 different variants. And so it's like every month it was, or every other month it was mutating. And it's like, that's nonsense. People it's only people who don't understand science would be able to be fooled by that. So that the people who don't understand science will not, the scientists should not have been telling the world that. Scientists should not have been. But they were talking like people who were watching movies. and who were deceived by the movies. So yeah, we have really been fooled. And so the SDA Bible commentary comments about all these other terms, observer of times, observer of the clouds, literally. May have been one who made predictions based on a study of clouds. The enchanter, or literally a whisperer or a hisser. So this derived noun form meaning serpent is used 31 times in the Old Testament. This is perhaps a reference to the practice, to some practices of spiritualism. Witch, another noun from the same root is witchcraft. A charmer, literally a tire of knots, referring to the wearing of magic cords and knots as spells against evil. Such a custom is common in the East today. The word translated or should be even, meaning not or a charmer, but even a charmer. Making a charmer explain the last word of verse 10. So verse 10 said, an observer of times or an enchanter or a witch, even a charmer. A consulter, literally one who inquires of an orb or a medium. An orb is the skin of a sheep or a goat, usually used as a water bottle by men who supply villagers with water from a well or a spring. So the reference here may be to the hollow sound produced by such a dry skin, and so refer to the whispering, chirping, or muttering of a familiar spirit that has gained control of the consulter or medium. Wizard, literally a knower from the verb to know. Here it refers to those who claim to have wisdom from other than human sources. Necromancer, literally a consulter with the dead. There appears to be little, if any, difference between a necromancer and a consulter with familiar spirits. And the word times is translated from a root meaning to practice soothsaying. The original meaning of the noun may refer to the hum of insects, the rustle of leaves, as in the related Arabic root. In that case, the word would here refer to those who claim to be able to interpret the various mysterious sounds of nature and commune with the non-human world. All of it is nonsense. So Isaiah chapter 8 tells us from verse 16, bind up the testimony, seal the law among my disciples, and I will wait upon the Lord that hideth his face from the house of Jacob, and I will look for him. Behold, I and the children whom the Lord has given me are for signs and for wonders in Israel from the Lord of hosts, which dwelleth in Mount Zion. And when they shall say unto you, seek unto them that have familiar spirits, and unto wizards that peep and that mutter, should not a people seek unto their Lord, unto their God? Why are you searching? Why are you seeking for the living to the dead? To the law and to the testimony, if they speak not according to this word, it is because there's no light in them. All of those, what you call it, those mediums, the enchanters, the witches, and they come and they're making sounds, all the magic sounds that they claim to be able to getting light from the spirit world. God has pronounced a curse on that practice because you're not communicating with the spirit, you're not communicating with what you think you're communicating with, you're communicating with devils. And the devils are not giving you true information, they're giving you false information because they seek to deceive. And there's no light in them. So you should actually be seeking, we should actually be seeking to get our information from God. So in 1 Samuel chapter 15, Samuel also said unto Saul, as King Saul, the Lord sent me to anoint thee to be king over his people, over Israel. Now therefore hearken thou unto the voice of the words of the Lord. Thus said the Lord of hosts, I remember that which Amalek did to Israel, how he laid in wait for him in the way, and when he came up from Egypt. Now go and smite Amalek and utterly destroy all that they have and spare them not, but slay both man and woman, infant and suckling, ox and sheep, camel and ass. And how did Saul respond? Saul smote the Amalekites from Havilah until thou comest to Shur, that is over against Egypt. And he took Agag, the king of the Amalekites, alive, and utterly destroyed the people with the edge of the sword. But Saul and the people spared Agag, and the best of the sheep, and of the oxen, and of the fatlings, and of the lambs, and all that was good, and would not utterly destroy them, but everything that was vile and refused, that they destroyed utterly. Then came the word of the Lord to Samuel, saying, it repented me that I have set up Saul to be king, for he is turned back from following me, and has not performed my commandments. And it grieved Samuel, and he cried unto the Lord all night. And Samuel came to Saul, and Saul said to him, blessed be thou of the Lord, I have performed the commandment of the Lord. And Samuel said, what meaneth then the bleating of the sheep in mine ears, and the lowing of oxen which I hear? And Saul said, they have brought them from the Amalekites, for the people spared the best of the sheep and the oxen to sacrifice unto the Lord thy God, and the rest we have utterly destroyed. Then Samuel said unto Saul, Stay, and I will tell you what the Lord has said to me this night. And he said to him, Stay on. And Samuel said, When thou wast little in thine own sight, was thou not made the head of the tribes of Israel? And the Lord anointed thee king over Israel? And the Lord sent thee on a journey and said, Go and utterly destroy the sinners of the Amalekites, and fight against them until they be consumed. Wherefore didst thou not obey the voice of the Lord, but didst fly upon the spoil, and didst evil in the sight of the Lord? And Saul said unto Samuel, Yea, I have obeyed the voice of the Lord, and have gone the way which the Lord sent me, and have brought Agag, the king of Amalek, and have utterly destroyed the Amalekites. But the people took up the spoil, sheep and oxen, the chief of the things which should have been utterly destroyed, to sacrifice unto the Lord thy God in Gilgal. And Samuel said, And the Lord has great delight in burnt offerings and sacrifices, as in obeying the voice of the Lord. Behold, to obey is better than sacrifice, and to hearken than the fat of rams. For rebellion is as a sin of witchcraft. That's the same question we saw before. And stubbornness is as iniquity and idolatry, teraphim. So having multiple gods. Stubbornness is as having multiple gods. Rebellion is as a sin of witchcraft. Because thou hast rejected the word of the Lord, he has also rejected thee from being king. And Saul said unto Samuel, I have sinned, for I have transgressed the commandments of the Lord and thy words, because I feared the people and obeyed their voice. Now therefore I pray thee, pardon my sin, and turn again with me that I may worship the Lord. And Samuel said unto Saul, I will not return with thee, for thou hast rejected the word of the Lord, and the Lord has rejected thee from being king over Israel. And as Samuel turned about to go away, he laid upon the skirt of his mantle, that is, Saul grabbed his mantle, and it tore, it rent. And Samuel said unto him, The Lord has rent, or has torn the kingdom of Israel from thee this day, and has given it to a neighbor of thine that is better than thou. And also the strength of Israel will not lie nor repent, for he is not a man that he should repent. So if God has said he's taken away a kingdom, don't come begging nothing. And then he said, I have sinned, yet honor me now. Honor me now. Saul wanted to be honored before the people. Honor me now. You did not honor God before the people to make the people obey God, but you want to be honored now by the prophet of the Lord before the people. I pray thee before the elders of my people and before Israel, and turn again with me that I may worship the Lord thy God. So Samuel turned again after Saul, and Saul worshipped the Lord. Then said Samuel, Bring ye hither to me Agag, the king of the Amalekites. And Agag came to him delicately. And Agag said, Surely the bitterness of death is past. And Samuel said, As thy sword has made woman childless, so shall thy mother be childless among women. And Samuel hewed Agag to pieces before the Lord in Gilgal. That is, so when Saul did that in front of Samuel and the people, he was showing them God's judgment on them as a people. You have obeyed, you have disobeyed, you have disobeyed. This man wasn't even supposed to be here in front of me, and he cut him up in front of Saul and in front of the people. And they would have heard him talking about why am I hearing the sound of these sheep and oxen? But remember, Saul was protesting, but look, I have obeyed, I have obeyed, I have obeyed. Oh, shucks, I didn't obey. Then Samuel went to Ramah, and Saul went up to his house to Gibeah of Saul, and Samuel came no more to see Saul until the day of his death. Nevertheless, Samuel mourned for Saul, and the Lord repented that he had made Saul king over Israel. Now, that was chapter 15. In chapter 19, Saul spoke to Jonathan, his son, and to all his servants, that they should kill David. And it was told Saul, saying, Behold, David is at Naioth in Ramah. And Saul sent messengers to take David. And when they saw as a company of prophets prophesying, and Samuel standing as appointed over them, the Spirit of God was upon the messengers of Saul, and they also prophesied. And when it was told Saul, he sent other messengers, and they prophesied likewise. And Saul sent messengers again the third time, and they prophesied also. Then went he also to Ramah, and came to a great well that is in Seshu. And he asked and said, where are Samuel and David? And one said, behold, they be at Naioth in Ramah. And he went thither to Naioth in Ramah, and the Spirit of God was upon him also, and he went on and prophesied until he came to Naioth in Ramah, and he stripped off his clothes also, and prophesied before Saul in like manner, and lay down naked all that day and all that night. Wherefore they say, is Saul also among the prophets. In 2 Kings chapter 1, Elijah the prophet told the messengers from the king that he was going to die because he had sent to Ekron, the god of, they sent they sent to inquire of Beelzebub, the god of Ekron. So he had injured himself and he wanted to know if he would live. So Elijah told him, no, you're going to die. He told the messengers, go back and tell the king you're going to die, because instead of inquiring of the Lord your God in Israel, the inquiring of the God of the Ekronites. So the king sent some soldiers to meet Elijah up in the mountain, up in the hill. And he went, so it was the soldiers who were supposed to drag him down. And we know what happened in that story. They went up the hill and said, man of God, the king said, come down. And Elijah called down fire from heaven and consumed them. And then the second captain of the soldiers went with his 50 soldiers with him to bring down Elijah. And he went again. So he called on fire again, and that destroyed that 50. Now the king sent a third time. So this story actually parallels that evil king Ahaziah, the son of Ahab, king of Israel. So evil king. And here we have Saul. This shows how evil and how unrepentant he was. He was so much trying to kill David that he sent messengers to take David. And he sent the next set of messengers to take David. And the Spirit of the Lord overcame them, so they couldn't do what they were sent to do. And then Saul himself, seeing that he couldn't send people to take David, he came himself to try to take David. In 1 Samuel chapter 20, it came to pass on the morrow, which was the second day of the month, that David's place was empty. And Saul said to Jonathan his son, Wherefore cometh not the son of Jesse to meet, neither yesterday nor today? And Jonathan answered Saul, David earnestly asked leave of me to go Bethlehem. And he said, let me go, I pray thee, for a family hath a sacrifice in the city, and my brother has commanded me to be there. And now if I have found favor in thine eyes, let me get away, I pray thee, and see my brethren. Therefore he cometh not to the king's table. Then Saul's anger was kindled against Jonathan, and he said to him, Thou son of the perverse, rebellious woman. In other words, your mother. He cursed his own son, mother. Why? Because he was so determined that once David reaches there, he will be able to kill David, because he realized that God had anointed David to be king after him. So Samuel had told him, God has rejected you from being king, and here he is holding on to the role of being king, even though God has appointed somebody, and he knows his time is short. Saul knows his time is short, and he's fighting up. Just as we know that in the end time, Satan knows his time is short. So he's fighting up and seeking to kill the people of God. Do I not know that thou hast chosen the son of Jesse to thine own confusion, and unto the confusion of thy mother's nakedness? For as long as the son of Jesse liveth upon the ground, thou shalt not be established, nor thy kingdom. Wherefore now send and fetch him unto me, for he shall surely die. And Jonathan answered Saul his father and said unto him, Wherefore shall he be slain? What has he done? And Saul cast a javelin at him to smite him, whereby Jonathan knew that it was determined of his father to slay David. In 1 Samuel chapter 22, when Saul heard, so David had to go hiding, he was hiding in the wilderness. When Saul heard that David was discovered and the men that were with him, now Saul abode in Gibeah under a tree in Ramah, having his spear in his hand, and all his servants were standing about him. Then Saul said to his servants that stood about him, Hear ye now, you Benjamites, will the son of Jesse give every one of you fields and vineyards, and make you all captains of thousands and captains of hundreds? That you all have conspired against me, that there is none that showeth me that my son has made a league with the son of Jesse, and there is none of you that is sorry for me? or show it unto me that my son has stirred up my servant against me to lie in wait, as it is that it is day? Then answered Doeg the Edomite, which was set over the servants of Saul, and said, I saw the son of Jesse coming to Nob, to Ahimelech the son of Ahitub, and he inquired of the Lord for him, and gave him victuals, and gave him the sword of Goliath the Philistine. Then the king sent to call Ahimelech the priest, the son of Ahitub, and all his father's house, the priests that were in Nob, and they came all of them to the king. So Saul was so paranoid and tormented by his delusions that he called for the priest. And Saul said, Hear now, you son of Ahitub. And he answered, Here I am, my lord. So this is the chief priest and the family of the priest. And Saul said unto him, Why have you conspired against me that thou and that son of Jesse, in that thou hast given him bread and a sword and hast inquired of God for him? Now this should have given him pause, because if Ahitub inquired of God the Lord, you must realize that you are fighting against God. But Saul didn't care. Anyway, he continues, that he should rise against me to lie in wait as at this day. Then Ahimelech answered the king and said, And who is so faithful among all thy servants as David, which is the king's son-in-law, and goeth at thy bidding, and is honorable in thine house? Did I then begin to inquire of God for him? Be it far from me, let not the king impute anything unto his servant, nor to all the house of my father. For thy servant knew nothing of this, less or more. And the king said, Thou shalt surely die, Ahimelech, thou and thy father's house. And the king said unto the footmen that stood about him, Turn and slay the priests of the Lord, because their hand also is with David, and because they knew when he fled, and did not show it to me. But the servants of the king would not put forth their hand to fall upon the priests of the Lord. So how far do you have to go in rebellion against God to want to slay the priests of God? And the king said to Doeg, Turn thou and fall upon the priest. And Doeg the Edomite turned, and he fell upon the priest, and slew on that day 5 persons that did wear a linen ephod. And Nob, the city of the priests, smote he with the edge of the sword, both men and women, children and sucklings, and oxen and asses and sheep with the edge of the sword. He killed everybody, except one man escaped and went with David and hid in the wilderness with him until Saul had died. Now, chapter 28, 1 Samuel 28. Now Samuel was dead, and all Israel had lamented him, and buried him in Ramah, even in his own city. And Saul had put away those that had familiar spirits, and the wizards out of the land. And the Philistines gathered themselves together, and came and pitched in Shunem. And Saul gathered all Israel together, and they pitched in Gilboa. So the Israelite forces were gathered against the Philistines. And when Saul saw the host of the Philistines, he was afraid, and his heart greatly trembled. And when Saul inquired of the Lord answered him not, neither by dreams, nor by Urim, nor by the prophet. So he had gone to attack David and the prophet when David was with Samuel. He had sent soldiers after them. The Urim and the Thummim were what the priests used to use to get an answer from God. But he killed all the priests. And then the Lord answered him not even by dreams. But even when God had sent him instruction a long time before via the prophet, he refused to obey. So Saul said to his servants, Seek me a woman that has a familiar spirit, somebody who communicates with spirits, that I may go to her and inquire of her. And his servant said to him, Behold, there's a woman that has a familiar spirit at Endor. And Saul disguised himself and put on other raiment, and he went. So he didn't go looking like the king. And 2 men with him, and they came to the woman by night, and he said, I pray thee, divine unto me by the familiar spirit, and bring me him up, whom I shall name unto thee. And the woman said unto him, Behold, thou knowest what Saul has done, how he has cut off those that have familiar spirits and the wizards out of the land. Wherefore then layest thou a snare for my life to cause me to die? And Saul swore by her, by the Lord, saying, As the Lord liveth, there shall no punishment happen to thee for this thing. Then said the woman, Whom shall I bring up unto thee? So Saul had actually done some good in putting away the spiritualistic manifestations out of the land, but this woman had escaped. So Saul said, bring me up Samuel. And when the woman saw Samuel, she cried with a low voice, and the woman spoke unto Saul, saying, why hast thou deceived me? For thou art Saul. And the king said unto her, be not afraid, for what sawest thou? And the woman said unto Saul, I saw gods ascending out of the earth. And he said unto her, what form is he of? And she said, an old man cometh up, and he is covered with a mantle. And Saul perceived that it was Samuel, and stooped with his face to the ground and bowed himself. And Samuel said to Saul, why hast thou disquieted me to bring me up? Now, in other situations in the Old and New Testament, when an angel appears to the man and the man bows down, the angel says, no, don't bow to me. Saul bowed to this apparition that was supposedly Samuel. And the apparition did not say, don't bow to me. So what kind of apparition do you think? Is this a good angel or a bad angel? This is obviously a devil. Samuel said to Saul, that is obviously the apparition was evidently Samuel said to Saul, why hast thou disquieted me to bring me up? And Saul answered, I am so distressed, for the Philistines make war against me, and God is departed from me and answereth me no more, neither by prophets nor by dreams. Therefore have I called thee, that thou mayest make known unto me what I shall do. So here he was now again pretending, wanting to follow the servant of God. But you see how he was operating? He was operating as someone who wanted to get spiritual guidance, not divine guidance. So he had already gotten the answer from the actual living Samuel, who told him that God has rejected you from being king and has appointed a better man. He knew who the better man was, and he spent all the rest of his life trying to kill that better man, David. So he evidently rejected God. He believed that the priest had inquired of the Lord for David, right? So that David would have gotten a message from God. So now he believes that God is going to give him an answer that is different from the one that was given David. What kind of lack of understanding is that? So then Samuel said, wherefore then dost thou ask of me, seeing the Lord is departed from thee and is become thy enemy? And the Lord has done to him as he spake by me, for the Lord has rent the kingdom out of thy hand and given it to thy neighbor, even to David. Because thou obeyest not the voice of the Lord, nor executed his fierce wrath upon Amalek. Therefore had the Lord done this thing unto thee this day. So the spirit tells you, whatever the spiritual being told him this, it sounds like something that Samuel could have said. But the point is, if God was not giving him any answers, how come to go by a devil communicator to get an answer that God refused to give him via priests? That doesn't make any sense. It was only evil spirits communicating with Saul, and the evil spirits, now they had Saul exactly where they wanted him, and they were very clear, you're going to die. That's what we had to plan for you from the beginning, when we were encouraging you to rebel against God. Now, we're letting you know straight, you're going to die. Because even they could see that if God had rejected Saul, then he was going to die. It wasn't a hard prediction. Since the last message that God had given Saul from Samuel concerning what happened with Amalek is fairly certain that we could say, well, yes, because of that. Verse 19, moreover, the Lord will also deliver Israel with thee into the hands of the Philistines. And tomorrow thou and thy sons be with me. That is, if Samuel is dead, tomorrow you and your sons will be with me dead. The Lord shall also deliver the host of Israel into the hand of the Philistines. Then Saul fell straightway all along on the earth and was so afraid because of the words of Samuel. And there was no strength in him, for he had eaten no bread all the day, nor all the night. And the woman came unto Saul and saw that he was sore troubled, and said unto him, behold, thy handmaid has obeyed thy voice, and I have put my life in thy hand, and I put my life in my hand, and have hearkened unto all thy words which thou spakest unto me. Now therefore I pray thee, hearken thou also unto the voice of thine handmaid, and let me set a morsel of bread before thee and eat, that thou mayest have strength when thou goest on thy way. But he refused and said, I will not eat. But his servants together with the woman compelled him, and he hearkened unto their voice. So he arose from the earth and sat upon the bed, and the woman had a fat calf in the house, and she hasted and killed it, and took flour, and kneaded it, and did bake unleavened bread thereof. And she brought it before Saul and not before his servants, and they did eat. And they rose up and went away that night. Now, some people say that that will have been a ritual meal which will have had blood in it, which may very well be the case. But the point is that Saul was lost. In Patriarchs and Prophets, chapter 67, we read, the scripture account of Saul's visit to the woman of Endor has become a source of perplexity to many students of the Bible. There are some who take the position that Samuel was actually present at the interview with Saul, but the Bible itself furnishes sufficient ground for a contrary conclusion. If, as claimed by some, Samuel was in heaven, he must have been summoned from there either by the power of God or by the power of Satan. None can believe for a moment that Satan had power to call the holy prophet of God from heaven to honor the incantations of an abandoned woman. Nor can we conclude that God had summoned him to the witch's cave, for the Lord had already refused to communicate with souls by dreams or by rumor or by prophets. These were God's own appointed mediums of communication, and he did not pass by them to deliver the message through the agent of Satan. The message itself is sufficient evidence of its origin. Its object was not to lead Saul to repentance, but to urge him on to ruin. This is not the work of God, but of Satan. Furthermore, the act of Saul in consulting a sorceress is cited in Scripture as one reason why he was rejected by God and abandoned to destruction. In 1 Chronicles chapter 10, it reads, Saul died for his transgression which he committed against the Lord, even against the word of the Lord, which he kept not, and also for asking counsel of one that had a familiar spirit, to inquire of it, and inquired not of the Lord. Therefore he slew him, and turned the kingdom unto David, the son of Jesse. Here it is distinctly stated that Saul inquired of the familiar spirit, not of the Lord. He did not communicate with Samuel, the prophet of God, but through the sorceress he had in the course with Satan. Satan could not present the real Samuel, but did present a counterfeit that served the purpose of deception. Nearly all forms of ancient sorcery and witchcraft were founded upon a belief in communion with the dead. Those who practiced the art of necromancy claimed to have intercourse with departed spirits and to obtain through them a knowledge of future events. The custom of consulting the dead is referred to in the prophecy of Isaiah. When they shall say unto you, seek unto them that have familiar spirits, and unto wizards that peep and mutter, should not a people seek unto their God for the living to the dead? This same belief in communion with the dead formed the cornerstone of heathen idolatry. The gods of the heathen were believed to be the deified spirits of departed heroes. Thus, the religion of the heathen was a worship of the dead. This is evident from the scriptures. In the account of the sin of Israel at Beth Peor, it is stated that Israel abode in Shittim, and the people began to commit whoredom with the daughters of Moab. And they called the people unto the sacrifices of their gods, and the people did eat and bow down to their gods, and Israel joined himself to Baal Peor. The psalmist tells us to what kind of gods these sacrifices were offered. Speaking of the same apostasy of the Israelites, he says, they joined themselves also unto Baal Peor and ate the sacrifices of the dead. That is, sacrifices that had been offered to the dead. The deification of the dead has had a prominent place in nearly every system of heathenism, and has also the supposed communion with the dead. The gods were believed to communicate their will to men, and also when consulted to give them counsel. Of this character were the famous oracles of Greece and Rome. The belief in communion with the dead is still held even in professedly Christian lands. Under the name of spiritualism, the practice of communicating with beings claimed to be the spirits of the departed has become widespread. It is calculated to take hold of the sympathies of those who have laid their dead ones in the grave. Spiritual beings sometimes appear to persons in the form of their deceased friends, and they relate incidents connected with their lives and perform acts which they performed while living. In this way, they lead men to believe that their dead friends are angels hovering over them and communicating with them. Those who thus assume to be the spirits of the departed are regarded as certain idolatry, and with many their word has greater weight than the word of God. The Hebrews were expressly forbidden to engage in any manner in pretended communication with the dead. God closed this door effectively when he said, the dead know not anything, neither have they any more portion forever in anything that is done under the sun. His breath goeth forth, he returneth to his earth. In that very day his thoughts perish. And the Lord declared to Israel, the soul that turneth after such as are familiar spirits and after wizards to go whoring after them, I will even set my face against that soul and will cut him off from among his people. The familiar spirits were not the spirits of the dead, but evil angels, the messengers of Satan. Ancient idolatry, which as we have seen, comprises both worship of the dead and pretended communication with them, is declared by the Bible to have been demon worship. The Apostle Paul, in warning his brethren against participating in any manner in the idolatry of their heathen neighbors, says, the things which the Gentiles sacrifice, they sacrifice to devils and not to God. And I would not that you should have any fellowship with devils. The psalmist, speaking of Israel, says that they sacrifice their sons and their daughters unto devils. And in the next verse, he explains that they sacrifice them unto the idols of Canaan. In their supposed worship of dead men, they were in reality worshiping demons. Modern spiritualism, resting upon the same foundation, is but a revival in a new form of the witchcraft and demon worship that God condemned and prohibited of old. It is foretold in the scriptures which declare that in the latter times some shall depart from the faith, giving heed to seducing spirits and doctrines of devils. Paul, in his second letter to the Thessalonians, points to the special working of Satan in spiritualism as an event that takes place immediately before the second advent of Christ. Speaking of Christ's second coming, he declares that it is after the working of Satan with all power and signs and lying wonders. And Peter, describing the dangers to which the church was to be exposed in the last days, says that as there were false prophets who led Israel into sin, so there shall be false teachers who privately shall bring in damnable heresies, even denying the Lord that bought them, and many shall follow their pernicious ways. Here, the apostle has pointed out one of the marked characteristics of spiritualist teachers. They refuse to acknowledge Christ as the Son of God. Concerning such teachers, the beloved John declares, who is a liar, but he that denied that Jesus is the Christ. He is Antichrist that denied the Father and the Son. Whosoever denied the Son, the same hath not the Father. Spiritualism, by denying Christ, denies both the Father and the Son, and the Bible pronounces it the manifestation of Antichrist. So interestingly, the church that denies that is the mother of the false doctrine concerning God, that is the Trinity, which denies that the Son is actually the Son of the Father, is also the Christian church that teaches the Trinity, is also the church that teaches that that teaches that the dead are living, that they are alive and can come and visit us as spirits. So obviously that is Antichrist doctrine. It is the same pagan doctrine of past time. By the prediction of Saul's doom, given to the woman of Endor, Satan planned to ensnare the people of Israel. He hoped that they would be inspired with confidence in the sorceress and would be led to consult her. Thus they would turn from God as their counselor and would place themselves under the guidance of Satan. The law by which spiritualism attracts the multitudes is its pretended power to draw aside the veil from the future and reveal to men what God has hidden. God has in his word opened before us the great events of the future, all that is essential for us to know. And he has given us a safe guide for our feet amid its perils. But it is Satan's purpose to destroy men's confidence in God, to make them dissatisfied with their condition in life, and to lead them to seek a knowledge of what God has wisely veiled from them, and to despise what he has revealed in his holy word. There are many who become restless when they cannot know the definite outcome of affairs. They cannot endure uncertainty, and in their impatience, they refuse to wait to see the salvation of God. Apprehended evils drive them nearly distracted. They give way to their rebellious feelings and run hither and thither in passionate grief, seeking intelligence concerning that which has not been revealed. If they would but trust in God and watch unto prayer, they would find divine consolation. Their spirit would be calmed by communion with God. The weary and the heavy laden would find rest unto their souls if they would only go to Jesus. But when they neglect the means that God has ordained for their comfort and resort to other sources, hoping to learn what God has withheld, they commit the error of soul, and they thereby gain only a knowledge of evil. Through the agency of evil spirits, strange gods were introduced, and because of transgression, the chosen people were finally scattered from the land of promise. This history Satan is striving to repeat in our day. God is leading his people out from the abominations of the world, that they may keep his law, and because of this, the rage of the accuser of the brethren knows no bounds. The devil is come down unto you having great wrath, because he knoweth that he had but a short time. The antitypical land of promise is just before us, and Satan is determined to destroy the people of God and cut them off from their inheritance. The admonition, watch ye and pray, lest ye enter into temptation, was never more needed than now. The word of the Lord to ancient Israel is addressed also to his people in this age. Regard not them that have familiar spirits, neither seek after wizards to be defiled by them. For all that do these things are an abomination unto the Lord. So in this time, we are really supposed to turn away from any of these abominable things. In Jeremiah 27, we read, in the beginning of the reign of Jehoiakim, the son of Josiah, king of Judah, came this word unto Jeremiah from the Lord, saying, thus said the Lord to me, make me bonds and yokes, and put them upon thy neck, and send them to the king of Edom, and to the king of Moab, and to the king of the Ammonites, and to the king of Tyrus, and to the king of Zidon, by the hand of messengers which come to Jerusalem unto Zedekiah, the king of Judah, and command them to say unto their masters, thus said the Lord of hosts, the God of Israel, thus ye shall say unto your masters, I have made the earth, the man and the beast that are upon the ground, by my great power, and by my outstretched arm. And I have given it unto whom it seemed meet unto me. And now I have given all these lands into the hand of Nebuchadnezzar, the king of Babylon, my servant. And the beasts of the field have I given him also to serve him. And all the nations shall serve him, and his son's son, until the very time of his land come. And then many nations and great kings shall serve themselves of him. And it shall come to pass that a nation and kingdom which will not serve the same Nebuchadnezzar, the king of Babylon, and that will not put their neck under the yoke of the king of Babylon, that nation will I punish, said the Lord, with the sword and with famine and with the pestilence, until I have consumed them by his hand. Therefore, hearken not to your prophets, not to your diviners, nor to your dreamers, nor to your enchanters, nor to your sorcerers, which speak unto you, saying, you shall not serve the king of Babylon, for they prophesy a lie unto you, to remove you far from your land, and that I should drive you out and you should perish. So those same words again. In the time when God was punishing the world by Babylon, there were many false prophets and many false magicians and sorcerers and so on. And they were being guided by Satan, by demons who wanted to bring destruction upon the people by rebelling against God. But the nations that bring their neck under the yoke of the king of Babylon and serve him, those will I let remain still in their own land, said the Lord, and they shall till it and dwell therein. I spoke also to Zedekiah, king of Judah, according to all these words, saying, bring your necks under the yoke of the king of Babylon, and serve him and his people, and live. Why will you die, thou and thy people, by the sword and the famine and the pestilence, as the Lord has spoken against a nation that will not serve the king of Babylon? Therefore hearken not unto the words of the prophets that speak unto you, saying, you shall not serve the king of Babylon, for they prophesy a lie unto you. For I have not said them, said the Lord, yet they prophesy a lie in my name, that I might drive you out, and that you might perish, ye and the prophets that prophesy unto you. I spake to the priests and to all these people, saying, thus said the Lord, hearken not to the words of your prophets that prophesy unto you, saying, behold, the vessels of the Lord's house shall now shortly be brought again from Babylon. For they prophesy a lie unto you. Hearken not unto them, serve the king of Babylon and live. Wherefore should this city be laid waste? But if they be prophets, and if the word of the Lord be with them, let them now make intercession to the Lord of hosts, that the vessels which are left in the house of the Lord and in the house of the king of Judah and at Jerusalem go not to Babylon. For thus said the Lord of hosts concerning the pillars, concerning the sea, concerning the bases, concerning the residue of the vessels that remain in the city, which Nebuchadnezzar, king of Babylon, took not when he carried away Jeconiah, that's Jehoiachin, the son of Jehoiakim, king of Judah, from Jerusalem to Babylon, and all the nobles of Judah and Jerusalem. Yea, thus said the Lord of hosts, the God of Israel, concerning the vessels that remain in the house of the Lord, and in the house of the king of Judah and of Jerusalem. They shall be carried to Babylon, and there shall they be until the day that I visit them, said the Lord. Then will I bring them up and restore them to this place. Now, we have studied many times, I suppose, that there were 3 times that Nebuchadnezzar came to Judah. So in the first time, it was in the reign of King Jehoiakim, when he took Daniel captive. The second time in the end of the reign of King Jehoiachin, and he took Jehoiachin captive. There's actually some stuff that is recorded in the scriptures where Jehoiachin was in captivity for decades, and he eventually received special food from the king of Babylon. But the third time to king in the reign of Zedekiah. So this warning here is a really important warning, because the false prophets were telling the people that those vessels that are that were of the temple, that were taken in the time of Daniel and of Jehoiachin, will be brought back, and the temple will still be around. But we know that because of the continued rebellion of the Israelites, so the false prophets did their work really, really well, such that Zedekiah refused to listen to Jeremiah, the prophet of the Lord, and Jerusalem and Judah were destroyed, and the temple was destroyed. They refused to obey, just like Saul. And we see now that the purpose of the false prophets was to destroy the people. All of those astrologers and sorcerers and magicians and false prophets. 2 Chronicles chapter 33. This is going back some years before Jehoiachin. Manasseh was 12 years old when he began to reign, and he reigned 50 and 5 years in Jerusalem, but did that which was evil in the sight of the Lord, like unto the abominations of the heathen, whom the Lord had cast out before the children of Israel. For he built again the high places which Hezekiah his father had broken down, and he reared up altars for Baalim, and he made groves and worshipped all the hosts of heaven and served them. Also he built altars in the house of the Lord, whereof the Lord had said, in Jerusalem shall be my name forever. And he built altars for all the hosts of heaven. So he built idol worshipping altars in the temple. He built altars for all the hosts of heaven in the 2 courts of the house of the Lord. And he caused his children to pass through the fire in the valley of the son of Hinnom. Also he observed times and used enchantment and used witchcraft and dealt with a familiar spirit and with wizards, and he wrought much evil in the sight of the Lord to provoke him to anger. And he set a carved image, the idol which he had made, in the house of God, of which God had said to David and to Solomon his son, in this house and in Jerusalem, which I have chosen before all the tribes of Israel, will I put my name forever. Neither will I any more remove the foot of Israel from out of the land, which I have appointed for your fathers, so that they will take heed to do all that I have commanded them, according to the whole law and to the statutes and ordinances by the hand of Moses. So Manasseh made Judah and the inhabitants of Jerusalem to err, and to do worse than the heathen, whom the Lord had destroyed before the children of Israel. And the Lord spoke to Manasseh and to his people, but they would not hearken. Wherefore, the Lord brought upon them the captains of the host of the king of Assyria, which took Manasseh by the thrones and bound him in fetters and carried him to Babylon. And when he was in affliction, he besought the Lord his God and humbled himself greatly before the God of his fathers, and prayed unto him, and he was entreated of him, and heard his supplication, and brought him again to Jerusalem into his kingdom. Then Manasseh knew that the Lord, he was God. What about Babylon? Isaiah 47 says, come down and sit in the dust, O virgin daughter of Babylon. Sit on the ground. There is no throne, O daughter of the Chaldeans. For thou shalt no more be called tender and delicate. Take the millstones and grind meal. Uncover thy locks and make bare the leg. Uncover the thigh. Pass over the rivers. Thy nakedness shall be uncovered. Yea, thy shame shall be seen. I will take vengeance, and I will not meet thee as a man. As for our Redeemer, the Lord of hosts is his name, the Holy One of Israel. Sit thou silent and get thee into darkness, O daughter of the Chaldeans, for thou shalt no more be called the Lady of Kingdoms. I was wroth with my people, I have polluted mine inheritance, and given them into thine hand. So in this message to Babylon, God is saying that he has given his people into the hand of the Chaldeans. And of course, this was prophesied more than 100 years before it happened. Thou didst show them no mercy, and upon the ancient hast thou very heavily laid thy yoke. And thou saidst, I shall be a lady forever, so that thou didst not lay these things to thy heart. neither didst remember the latter end of it. Therefore hear now this, thou that art given to pleasures, that dwellest carelessly, that saith in thine heart, I am and none else beside me. I shall not sit as a widow, neither shall I know the loss of children. But these two things shall come unto thee in a moment, in one day, the loss of children and widowhood. They shall come upon thee in their perfection for the multitude of thy sorceries, and for the great abundance of thy enchantments. For thou hast trusted in thy wickedness, thou hast said, none seeth me. Thy wisdom and thy knowledge it hath perverted thee. And thou hast said in thine heart, I am, and none else beside me. Therefore shall evil come upon thee, thou shalt not know from whence it riseth. And mischief shall fall upon thee, thou shalt not be able to put it off. And desolation shall come upon thee suddenly, which thou shalt not know. Stand now with thine enchantments and with the multitude of thy sorceries, wherein thou hast labored from thy youth. If so be, thou shalt be able to profit. If so be, thou mayest prevail. Thou art wearied in the multitude of thy counsels. Let now the astrologers, the stargazers, the monthly prognosticators stand up and save thee from those things that shall come upon thee. Behold, they shall be as stubble. The fire shall burn them. They shall not deliver themselves from the power of the flame. There shall not be a coal to warm at, nor fire to sit before it. Thus shall there be unto thee with whom thou hast labored, even thy merchants from thy youth. They shall wander every one to his quarter. None shall save thee. And we know when we look at Daniel chapter 5 about the fall of Babylon, when the writing came on the wall, the wise men, the sorcerers, the wizards, the magicians, the astrologers, the writing came on the wall and they couldn't even understand it. And it pronounced the immediate doom of Babylon. So their sorcerers, their sorceries and enchantments benefited them nothing. Micah, the prophet, chapter 5, talking to Israel, I think, says, I will cut off thy witchcrafts out of thine hand, and thou shalt have no more soothsayers. The graven images also will I cut off, and thy standing images out of the midst of thee. And thou shalt no more worship the work of thine hands, and I will pluck up thy groves out of the midst of thee. So will I destroy thy cities. So that word Anan, it is translated in many other places, in many other places as the observers of times. So that's the observers of times. So Malachi tells us for the future, chapter 3, behold, I will send my messenger, and he shall prepare the way before me, and the Lord whom you seek shall suddenly come to his temple, even the messenger of the covenant whom you delight in. Behold, he shall come, said the Lord of hosts. But who may abide the day of his coming, and who shall stand when he appeareth? For he is like a refiner's fire, and like fuller's soap. And he shall sit as a refiner and purifier of silver, and he shall purify the sons of Levi, and purge them as gold and silver, that they may offer unto the Lord an offering in righteousness. Then shall the offering of Judah and Jerusalem be pleasant unto the Lord, as in the days of old, and as in former years, and I will come near to you in judgment. I will be a swift witness against the sorcerers. That is in Israel, when God is preparing his way for his messenger to come, and against the adulterers, and against the false swearers, and against those that oppress the hireling and his wages, the widow, the fatherless, and that turn aside the stranger from his right, and fear not me, said the Lord of hosts. For I am the Lord, I change not. Therefore you sons of Jacob are not consumed. In Galatians chapter 5, from verse 19 we read, now the works of the flesh are manifest, which are these: adultery, fornication, uncleanness, lasciviousness, idolatry, witchcraft. And interestingly, in the New Testament, the word for witchcraft is pharmakia: hatred, variance, emulations, wrath, strife, seditions, heresies, envyings, murders, drunkenness, revelings, of such like, of the which I tell you before, as I have told you in time past, that they which do such things shall not inherit the kingdom of God. So pharmakia is translated in the New Testament as sorcery and as witchcraft, but it particularly means the administering of certain drugs and poisoning and magical arts pertaining to that. And in Revelation chapter 9, from verse 20, the rest of the men which were not killed by these plagues yet repented not of the works of their hands, that they should not worship devils and idols of gold and silver and brass and stone and of wood, which neither can see nor hear nor walk. neither repented they of their murders, nor of their sorceries, nor of their fornication, nor of their thefts. So pharmakia again, it's very clear that in the end of time, pharmakia, sorceries, is an important aspect of deception of the people of God. It's supposed to be providing a good, but it is actually poisoning. Revelation 18. And the light of a candle shall shine no more at all in thee, and the voice of the bridegroom and of the bride shall be heard no more at all in thee. For thy merchants were the great men of the earth, for by thy sorceries, this is Babylon we're talking about. So Babylon is related to the merchants who were involved in sorcery to deceive all nations. So they were making money by deceiving nations, and in her was found the blood of the prophets and of saints and of all that was slain upon the earth. So in the end of time, Babylon, the false church, is related to the great men of the earth, merchants, and pharmakia, poisoning by drugs, and sorcery and witchcraft. And 1 Corinthians chapter 10 warns us, what shall I say then? That the idol is anything, or that which is offered in sacrifice to idols and anything? But I say that the things which Gentiles sacrifice, they sacrifice to devils. We read that in Prophets and Kings just now. Or is it, no, sorry, in Patriarchs and Prophets just now. And we read that in Patriarchs and Prophets just now. What Ellen White said concerning Saul. The things which the Gentiles sacrifice is sacrifice to devils and not to God. And I would not that you should have fellowship with devils. You cannot drink the cup of the Lord and the cup of devils. You cannot be partakers of the Lord's table and of the table of devils. In Revelation chapter 21, and he that sat on the throne said, Behold, I make all things new. And he said unto me, Write, for these words are true and faithful. And he said unto me, It is done. I am Alpha and Omega, the beginning and the end. I will give unto him that is athirst of the fountain of the water of life freely. He that overcometh shall inherit all things, and I will be his God, and he shall be my son. But the fearful, unbelieving, the abominable, murderers and whoremongers, and sorcerers, pharmakias, and idolaters and all liars shall have their part in the lake which burneth with fire and brimstone, which is the second death. So in modern time, those who are into satanic worship are convinced that they will have some great power, but their end is just destruction. Revelation 22, verse 14 and 15. Blessed are they that do his commandments, that they may have right to the tree of life, and may enter in through the gates into the city. For outside of the city are dogs and sorcerers, and whoremongers, and murderers, and idolaters, and whosoever loveth and maketh a lie. Pharmakos, sorcerer. So God does not want us, and God is urging us not to get involved with magic and sorcery. They're simply communication with devils, demons. And if we want to live, we must not engage in communication with devils, but we must seek to communicate with God. Let us pray. Heavenly Father, we thank you for your words of warning. We thank you for your words of reproof. Help us not to be like Saul, who, when reproved, continued to rebel. Help us not even rebel before we are reproved, but help us to serve you faithfully. Help us to trust your word, for you have told us what to expect. And you have told us that in the end, the kingdom will be given to the people of the Most High, your people. Help us to live faithfully as your people, even in the coming time of trouble, and not seek any kind of magical supernatural aid or information from the devils that seek to deceive us, but to seek and to trust only you and your Son, Jesus Christ, our Lord. Amen.